Final question, Mr. Vice President. I'm sitting here with Nicole Wallace, who asked a version of this question when you were last on her broadcast, and perhaps it's symmetry because the two of us covered the live impeachment hearings out of this studio where we heard your name invoked sometimes several times per minute. Of course, in politics, you don't get rewarded for those kinds of mentions. And as a consumer, as a viewer, I feel like I know how much your son was paid on the board of Burisma. I don't know. I feel like he might have worked for Chinese or Romanian companies. I don't know. That's what the president and forces loyal to Donald Trump have said about your son, Hunter. You chose not to engage. We don't know the Biden family story from Joe Biden. So respectfully, Mr. Vice President, are you cool with that decision? Are you okay that your story was taken by other forces outside your family?
The answer is I am, as you say, cool with it because you guys know for a fact that what they told and said about me are flat lies. You won't even run the ads that Trump has put forward and the millions of dollars, over I don't know how many, $12, $15 million of negative ads. Every single person who testified under oath that worked for this administration said, I did my job well. I did it what the American policy was, the European policy, the IMF. Not a single person said I did anything other than what was honorable, period. Period. And I'll be darned if I'm going to play the president's game, which he is an expert at, which is to decide that what you're going to do is you're going to take the eye off of what he did and try to focus on something that has nothing to do with whether he did his job. The Republicans in the Senate acknowledged what he did, acknowledged how they went after me unfairly, acknowledged how they lied about me. And, in fact, what happened? They, in fact, acquitted him, and now he has free reign. I'm going to beat this man like a drum. I'm telling you, I can hardly wait to debate him. I want to debate him about corruption. Talk about corruption. This is the most corrupt president we've ever had in American history. So I can hardly wait, Brian. I'm not going to play his game. I'm not going to get into the idea of whether or not I have to defend anything. What he did was impeachable. He got impeached. He should have been convicted. They acknowledge he should have been, that he committed the crimes that he, in fact, they said he did, but they said it wasn't enough to impeach him. This is outrageous.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.